Welcome to the Private Eye Show, the podcast. Buckle up as professional private investigator Gunnar Christensen dives into the secret world of being a spy for hire.
It went up to the cloud!
And you can't get it down from the cloud?
Nobody understands the cloud. It's a mystery!
Join us each week for stories you won't believe, exciting guests, cool gadgets, marketing tips, software, PI advice, and more.
If the mailman has seen my vagina, we're moving.
The Private Eye Show. Now, here's your host, Kevin Fisher.
All right, welcome to the Private Eye Show with Gunnar and Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
How are we doing today?
Great, man. Great.
Excellent. So, Gunnar, this is our first podcast. You know, we're very excited to be here, but tell me about private investigators. Tell us a little bit more about what you did to get involved with this.
Oh, that's a long story, but I guess we've got time. I've been a private investigator for about 27 years, and it's been fun. I've been doing it my entire career. Just got involved with it. I was going to school for criminology and psychology. And
I believe, you know, being a private investigator is kind of a unique characteristic of its own, but you know, let's start with your name. How did you get the name Gunnar?
Oh, that's a good one. My parents were wild and crazy, I think. No, the truth of the matter is, they wanted to have a strong name for their youngest son, their last child, and they came up with a name like Gunnar because it's a Danish name.
Is that even real? Is that a real name?
Yeah, Gunnar. Yeah, with an AR.
Wow.
Of course.
I mean, do you have any sisters? Are they killer?
I've got a sister. I've got two sisters, a half sister and a full sister. My sister, I grew up with. Her name is Honey.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of porn starish, but I like it. I like it.
I'm sure she's heard that many times. Yeah, it's Honey and Gunnar. I was named after a Viking, which was cool.
Awesome.
I'm not sure what my sister was named after.
Because she's probably very sweet.
Yeah, she's very sweet. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Shout out, Honey. How you doing?
So tell me about some nicknames that you have.
Well, Gunnar. People can't believe that's my real name, and they always butcher it. But Gun, G, yeah.
G-Man.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes.
I think I even butchered it the first time we met.
It's actually pronounced in Denmark Gunnar.
Oh.
Just Gunnar is the Americanized version.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gunnar. Well, that's wonderful. Well, you know, my name's Kevin Fisher, which has always been interesting growing up. I had always had a lot of nicknames such as Fish, Fishman, K-Fish, and basically Fish kind of stuck with me for quite a while. It's always been something pretty interesting. So it's all right though. You know, it's not too bad, but it sure beats you know, shithead or dickwad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Fish. That reminds me of a Robert Duvall movie. I can't remember what movie it was, but his name was Fish in the movie. It was pretty cool. Yeah, Robert Duvall.
Yeah, he's good.
Bobby D, of course.
Wasn't he that race car movie? Rubbin is racing Harry.
I don't know that one.
Oh.
I don't know that one. I'm sure he was a private investigator in some movie.
Yeah, I think he was. Quite a few, actually. That
Yeah.
he kind of got characterized as that role for a while in some of those. Let's kind of first tell the listeners here about our, you know, podcast, as you can watch on the YouTube channel as well, and listen to Apple Podcasts and all the streaming sources. But, you know, we're going to talk about what Gunnar does for a living, how he started, stories about private eyes, funny stories about private eyes, and really kind of talk about how to become a private eye.
Yep, that's all good stuff. And you know, being a private investigator is it's a real job, and there's not many of us out there. It's a super niche sector, if you will, of investigations and of our society. But you know, we're out there, and if nobody knows we're there, that's even better.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're really secretive about what we do and
Absolutely.
who we talk to and how we get information.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, so kind of go back, you know, ways. Tell me about yourself and how did you first become a private eye? What made you interested? And let's go from there because this is pretty badass.
Cool. Well, I grew up here in Omaha and couldn't wait to move out of here because I just wanted to find something else and move to the big city. So I moved to Dallas and went to school down at University of Texas.
Longhorns?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hook
Yep.
'em horns.
Yeah, man. And I was studying psychology and criminology. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 21 at the time and just going to school and bartending part-time, put myself through college. And I knew I wanted to do something in law enforcement, didn't know what it was. But I wanted to make money too. And at the time, police officers weren't making that much money. So I was pretty much open to anything. And oddly enough, I just happened to get recruited into an agency in Dallas when I was 22, which was kind of cool. It was kind of a spooky story how that happened. I guess I was in it was a lecture at UT, and there was a big lecture hall with lots of people, and there was two suits like in the lecture hall just didn't fit in, and it was totally weird. And after the class, I was walking out, and they pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you about a job." I'm like, "What did I do?" Like, don't arrest me.
Like they were natural born or Men in Black.
Like Men in Black. And
Yeah.
so apparently they were scouting out the criminology program and wanted to grab some potential applicants to do investigations for the firm, for the company, we'll call it. And they pulled me aside, he handed me a card, say, "Hey, we're looking for investigators if you want to give this number a call and set up an interview." So I did. I'm like, "Whoa, that's weird. Super weird."
Mm-hmm.
And I called the number the next day, and some girl named Kathy answered the phone and set up an interview for me. And
So you at least knew it wasn't sort of some catch to go hang out with a couple dudes, or
no, it seemed legit. I mean,
Yeah.
it was spooky, and these guys were totally out of place. But I was like, "Huh, this is maybe how they recruit," and it was essentially.
awesome.
Yeah. So they pulled me into the interview. I did the interview and had to go out and buy a tie and everything. I was young and totally green, didn't know what I was doing. And, but they apparently liked me. I guess I interviewed well, and they plucked me out of all the guys they interviewed. And I got a phone call a week later, said, "All right, you can start."
How many people interviewed before you?
I was told later, there were about 50.
Wow.
Like
Wonderful.
ex-police chiefs and all kinds of different people that were way more qualified than me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you see a lot of police officers that go into PI work, or more PIs that want to become police officers?
mostly police officers who retire and they want to do something in the private sector, and they become private investigators. Typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they seem happier doing that? You know, police officers put themselves on the front lines. You know, PIs seem to be kind of hiding behind the lines, and you don't even know that they're there. So,
And that's kind of the problem, if there is a problem, I love police officers and I love ex-law enforcement, but they're trained in a certain way. I mean, they get information by just asking questions and being forthcoming and being aggressive sometimes. And that's totally the opposite of how we gather information. We do it using different methods. So it's a totally, for ex-cops, which they just have to learn a new way to do it. Yeah, but they're
Wonderful.
great.
when you were first starting to consider this as a career or an opportunity, what were kind of some of the myths, or what did you really think about PIs before you got involved?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what they did. I mean, I assumed, like everybody else, from watching TV shows and, you know, Magnum PI and the Rockford Files and stuff I grew up on, that just follow around, you know, hot women and cheating spouses and wearing trench coats. And,
Yeah, carrying a magnifying glass around with your stupid little hat on, and
yeah, the deer hunter hat. No, I didn't have any idea. So as I got more involved, I learned that at least the area where I specialize in is white collar crime and fraud, and that's kind of where I started in the industry, is investigating fraud and auto liability cases and personal injury fraud, and I found it's totally different than what you see in the movies.
yeah. What did you think maybe were some of the myths over the past years. We may be jumping ahead here a little bit, but debunking some of the myths that you ended up finding out that weren't really true about private investigators, that may be true and may not be true. And I think that's a completely long conversation to have, but what were some things that you ended up realizing that weren't as true as they seemed?
Well, probably, I don't know. I mean, people's myth and people's belief or ideals of private investigation is basically cheating spouses. They don't understand the rest of it. So the myths of, sitting in a smoky room all day with drinking whiskey, and then all of a sudden some hot chick comes in with her breasts poking forward, and she wants you to follow her cheating husband, and
then she ends up paying you in sex. I mean, is that...
You know what? Stranger things have happened. I got to tell you, but no. Typically, that's something that happens regularly. There's always cheating spouses, and there's always the other spouse who wants to find out what happened and find out the truth, and so we go out and get videotape. I've had my agency now for 25 years this year, so I've been doing it a long time, and we really don't take very many domestic cases, which they're called domestic cases, just because they're messy, and they're dirty, and it's not fun. I mean, it's not fun. Well, getting the videotape's always fun, but actually handing over that videotape to the client and say, hey, here's a videotape of your husband in the back seat of a Lexus behind a Mexican restaurant in West Palm Beach, having sex with a waitress. That's a true story, and that's not.
And that'd be tough. I think in a different perspective, it's kind of like being a doctor and having to go tell somebody that your husband or your spouse had passed away, because of the shock and how difficult that is for somebody to hear, because you really don't want to believe it in the first place.
And when you produce videotape and they see it, it's terrible.
Absolutely,
it's terrible. You're breaking people's hearts, but at the same time, on the flip side of the coin, you're giving them the information that they requested, and they want to know, was that guy cheating or was she cheating?
Yeah.
Women cheat just as much as men.
Absolutely.
It's probably 50-50.
Yeah.
So I don't want men to get a bad rap, man.
No, we certainly don't need that. And, I think, as we all know that women are wired differently than men, and we all have our different greatnesses. What are some more interesting myths about private eyes that are false?
Well, let me ask you this. You not being a private investigator, your history is very different than mine. What were some of your beliefs about what we do?
I always think that you carry a badge around, you have a gun, you are just as qualified as a police officer would be to go out and investigate or do certain activities that law enforcement has.
Well, we definitely have the experience to investigate, just like law enforcement. We don't have any arrest power. We're basically civilians working in a civil capacity rather than criminal, typically. And we're just as good as they are, but we're just doing it differently. I don't want to call us law enforcement for civil, but we're definitely the truth finders. And if somebody's doing something they're not supposed to do, then we find out.
What's your access to public information? Are you able to find out things easier, or is it still the same as a civilian, but you can get access better?
Great question. People think they can go online and get on the internet and go to info.com or one of those websites, and they're absolutely terrible. We have, as licensed private investigators, and we're licensed, heavily licensed, we have access with our credentials to get database information that civilians, typical people can't get.
Awesome.
So it's actually the same stuff the FBI uses, the same databases. We don't have access to NCIC, but as far as the other compilation databases, we have access to that.
Very cool. Are you affiliated with any police departments, or if you are working in an investigation, do you ever go work with the police on certain things?
All the time. I do, the type of work that I do mostly is civil investigations for catastrophic injuries like workplace shootings and robberies where somebody gets hurt at work typically. And yeah, I deal with the police all the time. In fact, a standard surveillance case, we'll call the police department, let them know where we're going to be on surveillance, say, hey, we're going to be on surveillance at this address, and this is what we're driving, and we're the good guys, so don't come out and, don't come out and turn your cherries
People are
on.
sitting there going, why is this guy sitting in front of our house right now with a camera and he's looking around like a weirdo? Then
Yeah.
he might be a spook, but most of the time he's probably a PI.
Yeah, most of the time. But people have never seen a PI before. They don't know what it looks like. They just see a suspicious car parked in front of their house. I mean, my car is dark gray. It's got blacked out windows, and it's all stock, but it's kind of dark colors.
Do you park in front of somebody's house if you're surveilling them, or do you usually park down the street?
Well, that depends on the neighborhood. Like I'll canvass a neighborhood and see where my subject lives, and I'll determine where the best spot is to sit surveillance. Typically, it's going to be 4 or 5 houses away. Sometimes it's further, but we want to sit far enough away from the subject that we don't spook our subject and the neighbors directly close by. Because I mean, at least here in Omaha, everybody knows their neighbors. In Palm Beach, in Florida, Miami, other places I've worked, Dallas, nobody knows anybody. I mean, they don't care. They're like, I don't want to know my neighbors. So we can sit a little bit closer. So, yeah, we sit far enough away. We call the police department, let them know where we're at, and we sit there and wait for our subject to leave and videotape them all day long.
That's pretty awesome. Have you ever been following someone and they find out that you are following them?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it happens from time to time. Even with all your experience or all my experience, typically it's a one man on one subject, like a one-on-one, kind of like a one-on-one basketball. So we don't usually have more than one investigator on a case. So yeah, sometimes they'll get spooked when we're following them. But there's a trick to it. Pay attention. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what your subject is thinking, how he's driving, and you should be able to know. But from time to time, it does happen. I mean, if they're a career claimant, as they say, or they've been pulling scams their whole life, we see that a lot in Florida, then they'll walk out their door and start looking for surveillance immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Florida just has about the craziest stories in the world.
Oh, definitely. Florida's a very unique state
Very
to work in.
unique.
It's like all the good people, but there's a lot of trashy people that move south for the winter and they never leave. And then Florida has no state tax, so it definitely brings in a lot more people.
Wonderful. Are you guys allowed to tap phones at all?
Good question. No, we can't tap phones without a warrant, just like the police.
Okay.
I mean, there are ways to legally pick up audio if it's legal in a given state. So,
So you can't sit outside in your car and try to listen to somebody talking on their phone, or it depends on a state law.
it depends on the state law. I mean, you can't wiretap somebody or eavesdrop. Typically, it's called a one-party or two-party state. For example, Nebraska is a two-party state now, when it used to be a one-party. That means one-party state means only one person in the conversation needs to be aware of the recording. But now it's both people. So if I record a conversation with you on the phone here in Nebraska, I have to let you know and get your permission to record.
Are you allowed to place cameras inside of people's houses?
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. But the person who hires me to do that has to own the house.
Okay,
Has to be their house.
wonderful. Do the police ever ask you to put surveillance in home, or what about a hotel?
Well, it depends. I mean, if we're like doing some kind of a sting operation, and it's my hotel room and I'm party to it, again, it just depends. Video is very different than audio. Audio's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
So, the police do things their way, and they don't really talk to us. They just don't want to confer with outside of law enforcement.
So your days are absolutely action-packed, or can they be slow?
Great. I have to laugh. I mean, all right, surveillance in and of itself is not for everybody. It's tough. So, I mean, for me, I love it. I mean, the job was made for me. But it's 90% sitting there waiting, and it's kind of boring. But you have to pay attention.
But
all
once
the time.
the action starts happening, though, then you get really excited.
It's a huge rush. It's
It
like,
is.
I mean, the game is on. And once that guy comes out of the house, it's game on. Yeah. It's me, it's that person. It's kind of like the way I look at it. It's me against them, and now we're going to dance.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
What was your first big surveillance opportunity that you had?
I've had a lot of big surveillance opportunities and a lot of weird big cases. I'll just start with like my first case. It was a disaster, kind of. We'll get more into the how I started and that first 6 months at some point, but it was tough. So my first subject ever, I got my first file. I was 22 years old. Go investigate this African American woman in Fort Worth, Texas, and she had sprained her thumb or something at work, just something kind of insignificant. But she was malingering, and that means she was pretending to be hurt so she didn't have to go back to work. And thumb injury. I'm like, dang, how am I going to get videotape of somebody with a thumb injury? Anyway, somehow I got myself positioned in the right spot and got my video camera out and got her walking to her car. This sounds so boring, but it was pretty cool for my first case. And she's operating her cell phone with her thumb. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm videotaping this person using her thumb.
Wow.
And then she got in her car and drove away. I'm like,
Was she holding up a thumbs up out the window?
she was not, but she was still moving her injured thumb. And hey, to get videotape of somebody's injured thumb is pretty cool. Anyway,
So you won that for the company, and they were obviously very happy with what they saw.
well, I needed to follow her.
Yeah.
That's when it got tough.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
following people is the hardest part of the job. To follow somebody successfully and they not know you're back there, and then to get in position to videotape them where they stop. It's a super challenge. So of course I lost her immediately. I mean, following people and timing traffic lights and stop signs and trying to stay in your subject's blind spot back into the right. It's a challenge.
Do you ever pull through gas stations to follow somebody acting like you're going to go in, and then you pull out immediately after them to keep tailing them?
Yeah, all the time. It's like duck and hide.
Yes.
And they're back into the right blind spot, and pay attention to their head, and like where are they looking? And you can kind of tell if they're paying attention to what's behind them.
You know, the interesting part with that is typically I look kind of behind me to see who's behind me. If you see a car tailing you, even if it's 4 cars away, you still know. But some people are just morons and they don't realize that.
You know, you say that, Kevin, but you think you know, but you don't know. 4 cars back, I'm already too far back. If I'm in the city, yeah, I'm already too far back. Yeah, you're just not going to know. I mean, now I'm very good at it, so I know what you're thinking just by the way you're driving and the way your head's turning. And I know where to stay back where you can't see me.
Really?
I might find one other car to use as a buffer.
Okay.
And hey, I drive a pretty common car. It's a common Toyota SUV. And hey, maybe that guy just think, damn, there's a lot of Toyotas out there. So yeah, we keep our cars stock so they don't look unique. We want to be just blend in and
Absolutely.
just be a nobody.
Yeah.
It's like that new movie that's out, Nobody. You have to watch the trailer.
I still want to see that. It
Yeah.
looks great.
Yeah, it looks good.
So now, for somebody who wants to become a PI, what are some pointers that you can give to them to possibly point them in the right direction?
Well, I tell you, this job is, like I said, is not for everybody. So every state is different how you become a private investigator. Every state has their own laws and department that regulates us. Basically, you have to get hired into an agency and be sponsored by somebody like me as an agency owner. So I can hire anybody I want to as long as they're licensable.
Okay.
That means no felonies, no crimes of moral turpitude. have a pretty clean background check because the FBI runs our fingerprints. Here in Nebraska, it's the state police that does the background checks. And I got to tell you, out of all the states I'm licensed in, Nebraska, they're sticklers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want the state police. I mean, they just comb. There's not many applicants, so they have time to really investigate our backgrounds.
Okay.
So, which is good. I mean, we want good people in our industry.
Oh,
period.
absolutely. And you want to, if you're being hired, people want to trust that you're doing the right job.
Yeah, yeah.
And doing it accurately and professionally.
I mean, we have a license to essentially stalk people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that the people doing the surveillance, if you will, they're good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we find out things.
Well, and you can't have a guy who's, surveilling somebody and he gets bored and is watching porn all day and playing Candy Crush, and then he misses the whole story about what just happened, and the person took off, and then you just don't know anything.
Oh my God, I got to tell you the story. I hired this boy. I was probably 30 at the time, and I met this guy named Gunnar. I mean, with a name like Gunnar, I'm like, this guy has to be as awesome as I am, right? His name was Gunnar, I don't know, something Smith or something. And I'm like, all right, I'll hire him, I'll train him. I knew his dad. He was a boater, and I'm a big boater. So I'm like, all right, this guy's name's Gunnar. And so I brought him in, I got him licensed, and he was licensable. And I put him through our training program, and he did okay. And I put him out on a surveillance in South Miami Beach. I'm like, all right, guys, this is his first job. He's doing good. And, you start the first case at 6 a.m. or the first day of a new case every day at 6 a.m. And I'm like, all right, let's see how he does. You have to update me or our office by 10 a.m. So all of a sudden, 9:30 a.m., I get a phone call. I'm like, all right, Miami Police Department. No, it's South Beach Police. And I'm like, is this Mr. He said on the phone, is this Mr. Christensen? And I said, yes. Do you know a Gunnar so-and-so? And I'm like, yeah, what did he do? He's like, well, he says he's a private investigator and he's on surveillance here. And a neighbor saw him smoking marijuana in the car. I'm like, oh, you've got to be shitting me.
Really?
Yeah, true story. And the cop was super cool. He confirmed his story. And, this was a long time ago. I mean, marijuana is still illegal. And the cop said, what do you want me to do with him? I'm like, let him go. I'll take care of it. Totally did this guy a solid favor. So the officer let him go. And, of course, Gunnar came back to the office, and I fired him immediately.
Absolutely.
But the point is, man, this job's not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be patient
And committed.
Absolutely. That's the
And
perfect word.
Yeah, you have to keep your faculties about you. I mean, we may do surveillance in Miami Beach, and there's a lot of apartments down there and condos, and you have to literally sit in the parking lot and stare at somebody's door and wait for them to come out. If you look away for 5 seconds, you might miss it. So you have to really pay attention. So, and then they come out, and that's when the job gets fun. Yeah. And you better be you better not be stoned when you're following somebody.
Well, absolutely.
Come on. So that's just one of those things. People are people.
Yes, they are, but you just have to be prepared of what you're stepping yourself into. How do you train your people?
Actually, I put together over the years like a really cool, like a military style training program where we it's kind of like a 3-day classroom, then a 3-day on-the-job training, where we take the applicants through various types of training, like how to write reports. I mean, it starts off with boring stuff, how to write reports, because every report that we write is evidence that is to be used in trial. So we look at it like that. So
very detailed.
Very detailed, but no opinions.
Yes.
This is a fact-based business.
That's a great point that you just brought up, that it has to be fact-based. That's why you're there, because people want the facts of what they're doing wrong.
We are essentially paid observers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you record it and you document that, and that's what people pay you for, to show up in court and testify to.
Exactly. When you get on the stand and testify, and we do from time to time, I've been called to testify many times, they cross-examine me and say, well, what is your opinion on this? And I, of course, immediately say, well, I don't have an opinion. But I did observe
the fifth.
No, but I did observe this, and he appeared to get around normally. Or
Yeah. Wonderful.
So back to the training. Yeah, it's a kind of a 6-day military-style training where we set them down in a classroom and go over how to videotape, basic fundamentals. We'll get more into that later. It's a pretty detailed training program.
Absolutely.
First of all, I want to weed people out.
No, and we have many more shows coming up here, so we are very excited to be bringing this to you. We've got great stories to tell. Let's tell one story here really quick, maybe two. We're each going to read one, and then we're going to get ready for our next one here coming up in about a week. This one absolutely cracks me up. So a wife hired a PI to, he did place cameras in her house, but the reason why was because that a lot of her stuff was smelling like shit. So her combs, her toothbrushes, I mean, things that she used in the bathroom a lot was just smelling bad. So a PI put cameras in his house and in fact caught the guy with her toothbrush up his butt.
Oh, good Lord.
Walking around, and he even had a chub walking around too. That he was excited by that.
I don't know what to say, Kevin. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Absolutely disgusting. But the reason why he was doing this is that they were getting divorced and he just did not like her anymore. So decided that sticking things up his ass was the best idea ever.
That is the craziest story I've ever heard.
It is something else.
He must have been a really sick person.
Very sick.
Well, I'm glad he got caught.
And he did get caught. You know, she divorced him, probably took what she wanted to take, and they had evidence of him actually sticking her stuff up his butt.
Well, I got to tell you, as a private investigator, you didn't need to hire a private investigator for that. I mean, that was just, listen, don't call a PI if you want to do that.
If you smell it and it doesn't smell very good, just assume that that's what's happening.
Yeah, throw it away.
Throw it away.
But apparently that person wanted the video evidence, and she didn't know how to get it.
Yes.
So she called somebody who she's a professional to obtain video, and that's what we do. We're video experts, and we know how to get it anywhere. Ugh, that's gross.
Well, wouldn't you really, in a situation like that as well, wouldn't you just know?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you just know?
I would totally know.
I mean, throw it away. It's
I mean,
absolutely gross. Throw it away, divorce him, and get the hell out of there, because what the hell are you sitting there waiting around to ask questions for why your stuff smells like shit? I mean, just go.
I got to tell you, Kevin, I mean, when I started in the business, technology was so antiquated compared to now. And we can talk about that sometime soon. But the cameras that are available now, even on Amazon, I mean, you can spend $15 or $25 on a camera that appears to be like an iPhone cube that you plug into a socket with a 1080p camera built inside of it and put it in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
With an SD card in there, and it will record all motion that comes in the bathroom.
Okay.
So, I mean, she could have solved her own problem for $25. And, you know, I hate to see private investigator's name get dragged through the mud on stories like the toothbrush and the butt thing. But, yeah, you can pretty much solve those problems without calling a pro.
Well, people just guess they don't know what else to do.
Yeah, you know, the problem is a lot of private investigators, I got to hit on this, get a really bad rap. People think that what we do is kind of lurking in the shadows and doing things that are not above board. And that's from the movies.
Yeah.
You know, that's all stuff from the movies. We're actually very professional, most of us are. And
So have you come across anybody who just was a complete jackass private investigator that maybe you met him at a conference somewhere or met him on a job, but was just the biggest dipshit in the world?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say, gosh, I mean, I want to check my numbers, but there's so many private investigators in Florida alone, like 13,000 agencies or something crazy like that. And I would say 90% of them, I'm going to get reamed online for this, but I would say 90% of them suck. They just don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the full rounded skills to do a good job. And we're probably in the definitely top 10% of professional private investigators in the country, which is cool. But yeah, so of course
It's very cool.
So throughout my career, I've seen lots of dipshits out there.
Yeah. You take it very seriously. You have absolutely amazing equipment. Everything is done to a T and done the right way. So I would say top 10% is a very great statement to make on that. And I'd say it's even more fair to say that there are a lot of dumbasses, and the 90% probably makes that up.
Yep.
That they do it just to take a job, and they don't really have the passion and care needed to help these people. And they collect a check for it. That's the sad part.
Yeah, and we get paid well, and I pay my people really well. And gosh, I mean, when I started, I made $8 an hour, 25 cents a mile, and man, I was so happy to take the job. I think my first year I made like 50 grand.
Wow.
So I was working my butt off.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, $8 an hour. But now the job pays so much more, and so it's a pretty good paycheck. So we just have to hire the right people.
Absolutely.
That's always the challenge.
Yeah.
So and then I like to hire people like I was hired, somebody with no experience that I can train how I want. Mm-hmm. That's why it's going to be fun having you here, Kevin.
Absolutely.
I can train you.
You are going to train me
Exactly.
to be the best.
The best you can be.
Actually, number 2.
Listen, follow my lead, and you'll be awesome.
I certainly will. Well, folks, we really appreciate you stopping by today. Couldn't be happier to have us. I'm Kevin.
I'm Gunnar.
Thank you guys so much, and thanks for listening to Private Eyes. We hope seeing you soon. Check us out on YouTube and all the podcast streaming sites. We look forward so much. Subscribe, help us, donate. We're going to be around a long time, and we can't wait to keep sharing our stories. Have a great day.